In 2024, USC had a pretty good defense. What do they need this spring to make them great?
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I am your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC. It's part of the Locked On Network, your first listen every day. Whether you're watching this show on YouTube, wherever you're going to download this podcast, I'm always going to appreciate your support, and the show's always going to be free. So on yesterday's episode, my everydayers, we talked about USC's offense, what they need in the spring transfer portal, kind of get them to that next level. We're going to talk about the same thing, but we're going to flip the other side of the line of scrimmage and talk about the defense right now. What does Antonlynn, what is Lincoln Riley, what is Chad Bowden, what are they looking for this spring before the transfer portal window opens? Because they have to add a couple pieces. I think everyone would agree, right? Now, last year, USC had a pretty good defense. They allowed, 24 points per game? And if you take away those four pick sixes that USC quarterbacks threw last year, that number probably drops down. I think it's closer to 21 points per game that USC actually gave up on defense. That's really good. 21 points. If your defense is giving up 21 points or less per game, you've got a championship level defense. You can tell me I'm wrong. I disagree. But today's college football, it's a pinball machine when it comes to scoring. We saw it happen this year. Nick Saban talked about it. That's one of the reasons he got out. Anyways, this is what USC is losing from last year's really good defense. This is the production that's no longer on the roster. So you had Jamil Muhammad, defensive end. You had Gavin Meyer, nose tackle. Nate Clifton, interior defensive line. John Humphrey, cornerback. Mason Cobb, linebacker. Easton Mascarenas Arnold, linebacker. Cornerback, Jacoby Covington. Safety, Achille Arnold. Safety, Bryson Shaw. Cornerback, Jalen Smith. And your nickelback safety, Greedy Vance. All that's gone. A lot of production, including arguably your two best players on defense last year, Jalen Smith in the secondary, and Gavin Meyer kind of stole the show on the defensive line last year. But again, they still have a really good roster that's coming back for the 2025 season, and they added more pieces to Antonlynn's scheme. Much better players. Don't forget, so you've got the guys that are coming back. The 2025 class, you're bringing in someone who you anticipate to be an instant impact, or quick or sooner rather than later, Jakeem Stewart, Thanos. You're also adding Gus Cordova, Floyd Boucard, Cash Jacobson, and then on the late addition on signing day last week, Jayden Ramos, the defensive end, rush edge from Houston, Texas. You're also, this is what you have on the defensive line besides those guys, the new guys. You're returning Anthony Lucas, you're returning Braylon Shelby, you're returning Cameron Fountain. You've got second-year player now, Lorenzo Cowan. Inside, you're returning Devin Tompkins, Jade Abasari, who was going into his second year now. And then you brought in Keyshawn Silver, Jamal Jarrett, the two huge interior defensive linemen from Kentucky and Georgia, respectively. And don't forget, you've also got Kobe Pepe coming back. So you've got a lot of depth now. You're better. Linebacker, thank God Eric Gentry's returning. You're adding AJ Tuatelli late to the class. He's joining Matai Taguai as the other linebacker. I'm sure someone is going to end up using the transfer portal when it opens. That the transfer portal opens in the spring. It's going to be open for 10 days. It starts April 16th. So between now, when it opens, you're going to have players who are kind of looking at the rotation, looking at the roster, deciding, am I going to stay at USC? And we know Chad Bowden, Lincoln Riley, Danton Lynn, they're going to be doing some evaluations as well. They need to bring some guys in. There's no doubt about it. You love the core group that's returning. At safety, you've got Kamari Ramsey. You added Bishop Fitzgerald, the transfer from North Carolina State. Cornerback is a concern. You've got DJ Harvey. He's the transfer from San Jose State. He's a SoCal guy. But after that room is it's young. It's talented, but it's really young. Whatever USC needs, whatever they still want, they're going to end up having to pay for it in the spring transfer window. But it's kind of weird to say this, but it's a good thing that I'm saying it. I think Lincoln Riley's roster on the defensive side of the ball, I think it's in great shape. I talked about those additions, specifically Keyshawn Silver, Jaw Jarrett. Those two guys are going to really bring out the versatility in the defensive line room of those guys that are returning. Anthony Lucas. If he stays healthy, that's a really good thing. Cameron Fountain was really starting to show at the tail end of the season as he got more comfortable on the field. I think everybody anticipates Braylon Shelby having that breakout. When you got guys in the middle of the defensive line who cape things in, it makes those guys' jobs on the edges a lot easier. Because now all of a sudden, you've got the rest of you got the opposing offensive line. They gotta kind of cheat in. They got to lean inside. They can't cheat to the outside. That's a benefit to USC. So right now, like I said, I think the roster is in great shape on that side of the ball. The defensive staff, second to no one, right? You got a great duo of Eric Henderson, Sean Nua on the defensive line. You've got Rob Ryan now in charge of the linebackers. Doug Belk is overseeing the entire secondary. You brought in Trovon Reed to coach up the cornerbacks. And again, Danton Lynn overseeing the whole project. You like the coaching staff. You like the talent. But what do they need to make themselves elite? We know that they've got elite coaching. They can take good talent, make it play up to its potential. Now what are we can look forward to what that coaching staff can do with guys who've been in the system going into their second year, but now you're stacking talent as well. Like I did on yesterday's episode of Locked on USC when we were talking about the needs, the wants on the offensive side of the ball. I kind of broke it down to the 5 different position groups. I gave it a Defcon level, 5 being the most secure, the safest. Defcon 1 being, all hands on deck. You've got your finger on the button. You're definitely making a move. So because there's really only 4 position groups, position room, defensive line rooms, or 4 rooms on defense. Let's put it that way. So I took the defensive line, I broke it into 2 groups, interior and defensive end rush edge. I've got the defensive end edge group at DEFCON 5. That's my least concern right now. Again, I love the depth. I talked about the addition of Jakeem Stewart. I think eventually he's going to slide inside once his body continues to mature. Think Sean Cody when he came to USC. He started playing defensive end, but he was playing inside his freshman year, and he eventually ended up playing defensive tackle in his time as a Trojan. So I that's where I think Jakeem Stewart eventually ends up. 3 techniques. But again, when you have guys like Anthony Lucas returning, Cameron Fountain, Braylon Shelby, Lorenzo Cowan is in the system now for his second year. I talked about the new guys you're bringing in. The talent is stacked up. If you're going to go into the transfer portal, what are you looking for? Another depth piece? Okay. But, are you ready to write a check for an instant impact guy? Will there be one available? DEFCON 4. I got the interior of the defensive line. I love the size. I love the depth. I just want to see it in action. That's all. And I talked about the guys who are returning, the guys they're adding. Last year it was kind of all Gavin Meyer. Nate Clifton would, raise up his head a little bit on occasion. But once Bear quit, Gavin Meyer he was kind of the dude inside. Don't get me wrong. Kobe Pepe, Devin Tompkins, they were also contributors. But now when you add in the Keyshawn Silver, the Jamal Jarrett, now all of a sudden Devin Tompkins and Kobe Pepe, they don't have to be the guys. They're not going to be on the field for a lot of reps. Don't forget, you got Jide Abasiri. That dude looks like a first guy off the bus. Now he just has to play like one. USC is going to be just fine in their defensive line, whether it's interior, whether it's outside. And don't forget, you still got Floyd Picard, you got Cash Jacobson adding to the mix to give you some more depth on the inside. Defcon 3, the safety room. Kamari Ramsey. You got the transfer. I mentioned the name a little bit ago. Bishop Fitzgerald. Those guys are going to form a nice tandem. I anticipate that's your starting safety group. But what about Anthony Beavers? He's got some really good size, but I think he might be sizing himself into the linebacker room. Whatever position he's going to play, if he does play any safety, he's an inside the box guy. Last time I checked, I think he was up to 235 pounds. I mean, he's looking like a linebacker. I think with the safety room, you can, maybe take that from DEFCON 3 and, move it up to DEFCON 4. Once you get the rotation settled, there's, again, like the cornerback room, it's young, it's talented. You got guys like Christian Pierce and Marquise Gallegos and Jarvis Boatwright. But you got to get it figured out. Who's going to be the nickel? Greedy Vance, he kind of took that spot last year. He's no longer, he's no longer on the roster. He's trying to make the NFL. I just mentioned the cornerbacks. They're DEFCON 2 level. Again, really talented, really young. But your oldest, most experienced guy just transferred in, DJ Harvey from San Jose State. You like the numbers he's bringing with him, but you need somebody on the other side of the field, assuming he's going to lock down one of the starting jobs. USC's new cornerback coach, Trovon Reed, he said he wants dogs who know how to bite. He doesn't care about the size of the dog. He needs guys who are aggressive, who are willing to go make plays. They'll find a spot for you in the rotation. So again, assuming Harvey is the starter, once Marcellus Williams or Braylon Connolly or one of the other second-year guys grabs the baton, that group's on high alert. And then obviously linebacker, DEFCON 1. Right now, I know USC has to have their powers that be. They have to have their finger on the button, right? Your Easton Mascarenas Arnold gone, Mason Cobb gone. That's a lot of snaps. Forget about their production, whether it was good or bad. They were on the field. They aren't going to be on the field in 2025. I mentioned Eric Gentry will be back. If he's healthy and he can stay on the field, that is a huge, huge plus. And by the way, I just saw a picture of him recently. Dude's looking swole. Someone said 258 pounds. I don't know about that, but he definitely looks thicker. But after Eric Gentry, you've got Desmond Stevens. Maybe Anthony Beavers is going to play linebacker. After that, it's scary. It's just youth. It's inexperience. You got Elijah Newby. You got Matai Tagoai. Who am I leaving out here? You got Garrison Madden. He returns. He's a veteran, but he hasn't played. You got Jaden Walker, another second-year guy, but didn't play. And now you're bringing in Matai and AJ Tuatele. They got the coach back there. You got Rob Ryan. I guess welcome back to college football. This is why I think USC is going to be looking for at least one, maybe two linebackers in the transfer portal. You got to grab them. All right. Next segment. I'm going to talk a little bit about the quarterbacks. I'm going to tell you why. You got to stick around for the next segment. Stick around for the next two segments, but the next one specifically. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little 10 or 11 care. Always, sometimes I let things clutter up. Once I see it's clutter, I need to declutter. And then once I see it's all clean, nice, and organized, I'm ready to rock and roll. Well, whether you're tidying up, whether you need to just throw away stuff, clear out, whatever, or you just you want to buy something new, you want to make yourself feel better. Wayfair has everything you need, and it's all within your budget. They got some cool stuff. I told you I'm about to pull a trigger on a new office chair. Here's my favorite part about using Wayfair: the free part, the free and hassle-free delivery, even on the larger items, even like on chairs. Yeah, Wayfair site, easy to use, easy to navigate, and you're going to find everything you want, and it's not going to take you very long. There's something for every style, for every home, no matter your space or your budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration, and again, it'll match you up with anything you need. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to the wayfair.com site right now. That's WAYF like Frank, AIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. So I was on the Big Ten squad, the panel show that, get all the hosts from Locked On Network who are members of the Big Ten Conference. We get together once a week and we kind of like have a little get together, hang out in the bar type of scene, just talking back and forth talking over everybody as well. Today's main topic was that you're going to, if you watch it this week, the most over and underrated quarterback in the conference, as well as who's the best quarterback. Right off the bat, I was thinking, wow, you know what? I got to think about this one because there isn't really a quarterback in the Big Ten Conference in 2025 that just scares me. At least nobody on USC's schedule. I think everybody agreed just by default that Penn State's quarterback, Drew Allar, is going to get the best category because he's one of the few returning guys. He's going to be going to his third year as a starter. So I think you just say, hey, you know what? You wear the hat. You're the best right now. He got tagged not because he's the most talented, and he does have talent. Don't get me wrong. He played well in 2024. He got he led his team to the college football playoff semifinals. They were close to getting to the finals. But I don't think he's really the guy you're going to say, hey, I'm putting the team on your shoulders. You lead the team to victory. He's not that dude. Now, if their tight end was returning, he's another story. USC fans, I know all too well what Penn State's tight end can do. Now, as far as the underrated and the overrated, that's when the show kind of turned into a little bit of a smack talk segment. Excuse me. There was a general consensus, that Illinois, their quarterback, Luke Altmaier, is the most underrated. And someone said because he led Illinois to 10 wins. Okay, whatever. If that's the bar we're using, can he do it 2 years in a row? He wasn't really asked to do a lot. And, I kind of had to remind everybody, don't forget, Lane Kiffin gave up on that guy for Jackson Dart. So was Illinois, was it their schedule? Was it the offense? Were they just not asking Luke to do a whole lot? Because I remember watching him play when he was Ole Miss's quarterback. He was a turnover machine. I think last year he has 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. So improvement. But his completion percentage kind of dipped a little bit as well. USC travels with Champaign, Illinois. A few names that were bounced around for considered the most overrated included, and I would have put this guy in the underrated, but everyone said, no, he's overrated. It's Fernando Mendoza, the quarterback transfer from Cal. He's going to go work for Kurt Signetti now at Indiana. All right. I think he's underrated. I think he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the conference. But that kind of is like, all right, immediately the next question is how down is the quarterback play in conference in 2025? I started thinking about it. I was like, all right, well, let me just look at some of the quarterbacks and then who's on USC's schedule? Who scares me? So you got Ohio State. They're not on USC's schedule, but they're going with Julian Saint. Talented, but he's taken over for a national championship squad. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him. Michigan, are they going to force Bryce Underwood on the field if Mikey Keene, the transfer from Fresno State, doesn't work out? Where does Jayden Maiava fit in? Okay, let's talk about USC's quarterback, Jayden Maiava, assuming he's the starter game one. Trying to look at this, without putting on the cardinal gold glasses. Try and put your bias aside. Which starting quarterbacks on USC's schedule would you take over Jayden Maiava or anybody on Lincoln Riley's roster, whether it's Husan Longstreet, Sam Heward? Again, I mentioned Luke Altmaier at Illinois. USC's on the road. They play there. USC hosts Iowa. They brought in Mark Rosnowski, the quarterback from South Dakota, that everyone said, hey, USC should grab him out of the transfer portal. What about Northwestern's quarterback? By the way, his name is Jack Lausch. Could be the transfer from SMU. Nebraska, you got Dylan Raiola. Now, he's a guy that Nebraska's playing USC in Lincoln. He could cause issues, and especially if he takes the next step in his development. And don't forget, Coach Riley recruited him really hard. I mentioned Michigan already. Is it going to be Bryce Underwood by the time the Wolverines get to LA? Or is it going to be the transfer from Fresno State? What about Michigan State's quarterback, Aiden Childs? No. Purdue, a mess. Good luck, Coach Henson. You and head coach Barry Odom, you're choosing between, Evans Chuba, Malachi Singleton, and E.J. Colson. Would you take any one of those guys over USC's quarterback room? Of course not. UCLA's presumptive starter, his name is Joey Aguilar. He started 24 games at Appalachian State. He has 61 touchdowns over the last 2 years. You know what else he has? 24 interceptions over that same time span. And last year he threw 14, which just happened to be the worst in Division I. And he did that in just 11 games. This is why I feel like USC can win in 2025. The Trojans' defense should make another leap with the improvement that they're going to make with D'Anton Lynn. And again, you combine that with the quarterback competition they're going up against, please. So where would you rank Jayden Maiava? Underrated, overrated? Is he the best quarterback in the big conference? A lot of talent. I think you have to give Drew Allar the nod. He's going to be a third-year starter. But then who? If Coach Riley could choose between Luke Altmaier and Jayden, which one would he pick? Again, take off the blinders. Jayden Maiava, Mark Gronowski. Again, I mentioned Lincoln Riley. He recruited Dylan Raiola pretty hard. That one might be a flip of the coin. I think the best quarterback discussion in conference is wide open this year. I really do. Lots of young talent. But it might be a year where a freshman ends up making a name for himself. I guess we'll see. We'll find out soon. But if I'm Jayden Maiava, I'm surveying the field and telling myself, this is my year. This is my conference. What other quarterback would you take? I know there's guys who you say, well, they were rated higher. That's why I'm going to take him, like a Julian Saint. But what has he shown you so far? We know Maiava, what he's capable of. We know his physical intangibles. Does he have the mental intangibles to lead USC. I think that's what everybody's looking for. All right, one more segment. Men's hoops, 20 wins. So USC took on Penn State at Galen Center. They took them behind the woodshed, beat their butts, 92-67. USC was playing with a couple guys. They're dinged up. Desmond Claude's still not 100%. The flu bug is apparently ravaging the team as well. So a lot of the guys were playing under the weather. They weren't sure who, if they were even going to be available to play. Looked like everybody suited up. Everybody played who you would normally see in the game. Halftime, USC led by single digits. But then they came out in the second half and they made their first 12 field goal attempts. And within those first 12 that they made, they were 5 for 5 from behind the arc. They led 67-46 with 11 and a half minutes to play in the game. I mean, and then at that point, when there was 11 and a half minutes, they were 10 for 12 from behind the arc. I mean, they were just shooting lights out in this game. Chibuzo Agbo, he had a career high, 21 points. He was 7 for 9. I think he missed his first 2 of the game. Then he went 7 for 7 in the second half. 2 was amazing. Statistically, the team played outstanding. They shot 67% from the field. I mentioned their 3-point shooting, 75%. 12 for 16. That'll get it done. And USC is not a great 3-point shooting team. They were good from the free throw shooting, 14 out of 17. They, let's see, they had 15 turnovers, but they had 23 assists. They dominated on the boards, thankfully. That was a key to victory. That and the fact that Penn State, they're just not a really good basketball team. They're playing injured as well, so you take that into consideration. But overall, rebounding, what was it? 50. Yeah, 50 to, trying to add this up in my head, 50 to 22. Yeah, that'll get it done. Yeah, that'll get it done. Anyways, they were dominant in the paint. They had 40 points. Penn State 26. I mentioned 23 assists. They played well as a team. Probably their best offensive game of the year. When you look at the stats individually, you had Desmond Claude. He had 16 points. He was 5 for 6 from the field. He had 8 assists. He also had 8 turnovers, which you don't want to have a 1-to-1. You like the assist number. You just don't want, when it's that high, you don't want the turnover number to be equally as high, right? Let's cut that in half. I mentioned Agbo. He led the team in scoring with 21 points. Wesley Yates just continues to be that dude. He was one of the guys playing under the weather. He had 13 points. You had St. Thomas with 9. Josh Cohen had a strong game, 12 points underneath. You're starting to see Coach Muss add his 2 top freshmen to the rotation. Isaiah Elohim, Jason Shelley, they're starting to see some more minutes as well. Now, I said 20 wins. I'm on record saying that the team's going to win 20 games this year. They have 14 now. They're 6-7 in conference. And I know the schedule down the stretch is going to be tough. I get it. I really do. But 20 wins is doable, especially as long as Desmond Claude can stay on the floor. And if they don't get 20 during the regular season, I think they're going to get at least 1 in the conference tournament to get them that 20th win. Look, like I said, Claude has to stay on the floor. He missed the last 2 games with an injury. This was his first game back. He looked a little rusty in the beginning, but as the game went along, he looked himself. Had he played on the road against Northwestern, USC wins that game. So now they're at 15 wins. They're even in conference, 7-7. Or 7-6 actually, because you got to flip that. This Saturday they host Minnesota. That's a game USC has to win. They cannot give up a home win because now you'll have 15 wins overall. You'll get that 7th win in conference. But then you're on the road. You got to go to Maryland. You got to go to Rutgers. The schedule is going to set them up well with quad 1 and quad 2 win opportunities. Every single game left on their schedule is quad 1 or quad 2. So their goal, again, obviously you want to win 20 games because if you get there, you're going to be an at-large bid. But now you're focused on, can they be one of the top 9 teams when the regular conference schedule ends? Because if you're one of the top 9, you get a first-round bye. If you drop below that, guess what? You're playing a lot more games. And if you're, if you're team 16, 17, or 18, you don't even qualify for the conference tournament. So you don't want to end up 10 through 15. You want to get into that top 9. You're not going to make the top 4. Those guys get a double bye. But if you can go 5 through 9, yeah, you can get a day of rest. Big time. So right now, they're 10th in conference. 1 game behind Ohio State, who has that number 9 spot. When USC comes home, they're going to be hosting Ohio State. So we'll see where they're at that point. So Coach Muss, he's getting that team together. He's getting that team together. The bus is rolling. Every now and then they get a flat tire, like what happened at Northwestern. I did not anticipate them beating Purdue in West Lafayette. It's a good team. But look at their schedule. Look at their wins they have already. They've got a resume that's worthy of being an at-large bid. They just got to get some more wins. And like I said, the schedule sets up well for them. Rutgers, Maryland, UCLA. There's opportunities. There's lots of opportunities left. All right. That's it for this episode. I'll be back tomorrow. Bring another episode to you. We'll talk more about USC football. We're going to continue covering, USC's roster, their needs, both sides of the ball. Talk about recruiting as that keeps going. You're going to be here every day because I'm going to be here every day. So until the next episode, everyone, you know what to do.